Digital games are automated complex systems with the ability to manipulate information and provide immediate but narrow interactivity and network communications for a player. Agency plays a critical role in gameplay, giving a player the ability to immerse themselves in a game, and has long been considered one of the core pleasures of interacting with digital games. Games provide a player with a range of activities that can be governed by rules or goals, or can be completely free and imaginative, and it is the understanding of the balance between these elements that leads towards understanding appropriate agency. In this video, I will provide a view on the role of agency in video games. What is agency? What role does it play in affecting how a game is viewed, and what can be seen as good and bad agency within games? A true definition of agency has never been properly defined. However, the idea of agency in digital games is widely discussed in game studios literature, with the first reference to agency being by Jeanette Murray, who defined it as the satisfying power to take meaningful action and see results of our decisions and choices. Game designers often try to keep the knowledge of agency away from the player. Player choice with no knowledge of how it really affects the game world. The narrative and ludic elements of games have been researched and examined for years and is a topic for another video, but does play a part in how we define player agency. Ludologists refer to agency as a freedom from rules and restrictions, with choice and the player's ability to do what they want to be the main characteristics. Alternatively, those that believe more in the narrative a game can provide define agency as more of a feeling the player gets when the choices are influencing the game world, focusing more on meaning and the connection between the storyteller and the player. Salen and Zimmerman further stated that playing a game means making choices within a game system designed to support actions and outcomes in meaningful ways. Agency in games will always be a complex term, but can be defined as the ability to make meaningful choices within the game world and how these choices can make an impact upon the player and game. Agency provides a player with meaningful and enhanced gameplay. Video games are governed by rules that notify a player of what options they have in the game and often the consequences of taking an action. When a player takes an action or makes choices within the game world through their avatar, it gives a player control and positions them central to the experience. This sense of control and identification with a game character allows a player to experience empathy through the avatar, making for a much more emotional and heightened player experience. Choices are not only mechanisms put in a game by designers, but provide meaningful play in how they can impact the way a game progresses. Agency has no definitive good or bad aesthetic, but depends on the game and player. Kawa wrote about an axis of play between structured rule-driven games and play that is free from restrictions, referring to each as ludus and paidia. Although paidia provides freedom for the player, choices can often be made from curiosity, and too much paidia can leave the player with a lack of motivation to take actions and progress through a game. Additionally, too strong ludic games have low agency and can often restrict the player, making them feel a lack of control and emotion towards the game space. Tanenbaum and Tanenbaum argue that unrestricted agency in games story does not facilitate a healthy relationship between the author and the player, as stories use rule-based systems to guide the player. Some games will limit a player's choice as an illusion of agency, like a quick-time event. The player is given one choice but is still left with the emotional impact that they influence the outcome and that their actions were meaningful. Most games will show characteristics of both paidia and ludus, but will often encompass more of one. This kind of balance of agency gives the player choice in how they play, while also restricting the player enough to immerse them in the story. Dishonored allows the player to play aggressively or towards a more stealth direction, with the player receiving a high or low chaos score at the end of each mission. If the player chooses a high chaos path, more infected enemies will obstruct their way during the missions, and a different ending occurs depending on a high or low chaos playthrough. The game balances choice by allowing the player to immerse themselves into the narrative and make choices on how they go through the game world, not necessarily impacting the main story arc. Games like Apex and Phasmophobia are not necessarily about the story but the game's mechanics. They engage the player through the choices they can make and how they play the game, and the stories the players can create themselves. On the other hand, games like Dishonored and The Vanishing of Ethan Carter aim to tell a story by restricting the player's choices and inherently the actions they can take. They pull you in by immersing you in a story that is truly captivating. There is really no good or bad agency, although understanding the balance between paidia and ludus is key to facilitating a positive experience for the player. To wrap it all up, agency plays a critical role in video games, providing the player with meaningful choices which help to make them feel more in control and emotion towards a game world. If the consequences in a game are too rigorously enforced, games lose character as games, although if it is strongly reduced, they are losing character as interesting games. Through an understanding of paidia and ludus and the balance between the two, a designer can construct the rules and/or choices in a form that facilitates the self-expression of the player.